there, friends. Welcome back to Second Star to the Left. I'm Michelle, and this is my daughter, Billie.
Hi.
And here's where we'll share board game reviews, ramblings, and a few wrong turns along the scenic route. Welcome to Billie's belated birthday bash. We're going to do something a little different here, and we're going to let Billie tell us about the top 5 RPGs that she's excited to bring to the table and how she can possibly convince me that that's a good idea. Because if you've watched this, you know that I am a little bit more than reluctant to join in with RPGs. So, why an RPG instead of a lovely board game?
Because they're a great creative outlet, and there's a lot of storytelling potential that would be inhibited by a board game.
Well, what about a game like Gloom or Once Upon a Time?
Once Upon a Time is closer.
And also one of the reasons why I don't play RPGs.
I was like 12.
They told me that I didn't tell the story right. End of my storytelling. Okay?
A board game tells kind of a single type of story usually. But with an RPG, you can tell almost any story you can imagine and use the rules as a framework for it.
But don't you need a DM or a GM, a dungeon master or a game master to run them, and then what do you do? I can't run one, even though you seem to think I can.
You absolutely could.
We'll talk about that later. But don't you need someone who knows how to play it?
For most popular RPGs, but not all.
So what does a DM or a GM do? And is there really a difference, or is it just because it's not all Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, it's just because Dungeons and Dragons has the Dungeon Master, everyone else has the Game Master.
Okay. So, but it's pretty much the same role.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay. What do they do?
They control all the enemies, they facilitate the stories, they speak for the non-player characters. So if the party of adventurers goes into a bar, they're the ones playing the bartender, the shady guy in the corner, all that.
So do they already know every piece of how the story's going to lay out?
Absolutely not.
Is it because sometimes the adventurers won't cooperate?
Very often, players will go in an unexpected direction and you will have to ad-lib or make stuff up on the fly. Something I like to do is make up little kind of story blocks, little scenarios that you can just kind of drop wherever the players go, and that'll just buy you some time.
A backup plan for when we don't go where you want us to go.
I will eventually come up with actual story for what you've done, but there is a little bit of a just speed bump to slow you down a little bit.
Okay, but so 2 things that we know about me if you're trying to convince me a game. And one is that I like games that can be played in a reasonable amount of time. So sometimes I feel like RPGs live a little
An average
past...
session can be about 3 hours for me, 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel like they overstay their welcome a little bit. And I also like to play solo, which...
You can actually do that with several RPGs that I have. Like Apothecaria, the solo potion making RPG. 1,000-Year-Old Vampire solo RPG.
Were you going to say vampire making?
Yeah.
Because I think that's like a whole different thing. So these are just storytelling. Is this like choose your own adventure then? I mean, what's the difference?
Often there's story prompts and you might roll dice or pick cards to try to overcome a challenge, and then you say what happens. You are your own games master.
So if you don't know how to be a DM or a GM, can you still play these?
I would even recommend starting with those.
It still sounds scary. All right, still you have to convince me. Let's say that you have 1 or 5 chances to convince me to play an RPG. Knowing that, like a lot of people, I'm very apprehensive about sitting around at a table to make up a story in character.
You don't actually... I mean, you have to make decisions from an in-character point of view, but you don't have to speak from an in-character.
So I don't have to, like, do the voices?
You don't have to do voices. You don't have to even use, like... You don't even have to use, like, I statements. You can say, my character goes and does the thing. You don't have to do a whole conversation. You can say, my character goes and tries to haggle.
So what you're trying to tell me is not every RPG session looks like Critical Role.
Yeah, oh my goodness, no.
So do you think that Critical Role helps or hurts people getting into RPGs?
Little of both. Mostly helps because it brings out like awareness and gets a lot of people interested that previously wouldn't have been all that interested. But it sets a really different example than what most tables are actually like.
I haven't had that experience yet. So what's your first attempt for getting me to play an RPG? What do you got? And to be clear, I have played some. I just haven't had a lot of really good experiences. I've had a handful, but for the most part, I've always felt a little bit lost and a little bit like I'm just waiting for someone to quarterback and tell me what to do. So what are you going to bring me?
Some of your best experiences have been in more modern day settings. Or relatively close, like Call of Cthulhu, set in the 1920s.
I like magical realism more than like completely high fantasy.
Like urban fantasy kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Which is why my first suggestion would actually be something you might be familiar with.
Okay, sometimes I buy them and I think that I'm going to like them.
You do like it.
I know, but we didn't play it. We just
Whose
read
fault
it.
is that?
I'm going to say you.
So it's Kids on Brooms, because we didn't say it out loud yet.
It is Kids on Brooms, which is a variation of
Kids on
Bikes, which obviously I wanted Kids on Brooms more.
Kids on Bikes is inspired by like Stranger Things and Stephen King novels, while Kids on Brooms takes the same system and set of rules and does more of a Harry Potter kind of thing.
Is this just like D&D? And to be clear, when we say D&D, you mean 5th edition, because that's
I am generally talking about 5th edition because it is the only one I have real experience with.
So there's been many editions over the years from
5.
Shut up.
5.
5 is many. All right, so wait, there's been 5.
5.5.
Okay, nerd. That's what you're talking about when we say D&D, and that's what people think of. That's what Critical Role plays.
Yes.
Right? So that's the high fantasy version that you think of when you think D&D. When they make fun of it in a movie or on TV or anywhere else, that's
it's usually Dungeons and Dragons.
That's the one we're referring to, but that is not this.
No, and actually I don't have any Dungeons and Dragons on my list proper.
Well, because you played them.
But I do have a little in my honorable mentions for later.
Okay.
Just a little D&D.
So if this doesn't work like D&D, how does this work?
First, the creation of the setting and the characters is very collaborative. The players and the DM will work together to determine what kind of school it is, what kind of place it's in, what the rules about magic are in this world. Like, does the public know that there's magic, or is it more of a Harry Potter situation? And that's all worked out together at the table during the first session.
So the first session is just like planning.
Partially, yeah.
But so your character...
When you call it planning, it sounds unfun, but it's a fun, involved process.
I say that when you say, like, my roll and writes are spreadsheets, so I'm allowed to, like, get at you with that. So your characters are human in this, mostly.
They could be. They could be something else. It is entirely up to you.
Okay. This would be, to play a full campaign of this would be shorter than playing a full campaign of, like, a traditional
Generally,
D&D.
yes.
Can you just do one? Do you have to do a bunch?
You could absolutely do a one-shot of almost any RPG.
Okay, so you could have a story that had a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion in like one session. So you didn't feel like you had to commit to like 5 seasons of Kids on Brooms. Obviously, this one appeals to me since I bought it.
What was the other one you bought?
Damn the Man, Save the Music. It was an RPG based on Empire Records, which I just really wanted to own. We weren't going to play it, but it looked fun.
We sadly can't find it.
I don't know, it's somewhere in the house.
Because I didn't keep it with my stuff, because it was yours, and you're irresponsible.
Theme is going to be what gets me to play an RPG, and there's something to me about the traditional D&D that while I love fantasy and books and movies and things, it just feels overwhelming, like there's just too much to unpack in a single sitting or in a couple of sittings, so I like these themes a little bit better. That's why I liked Call of Cthulhu, because I could be like a magical librarian. This is how I play RPGs.
It's an easier perspective to see from, one that's coming from our own world.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. If you're playing, like, in character even a little bit, and all of a sudden I'm a troll, and do not make nasty comments.
You're making it way too easy. Pick a different example.
Okay, and all of a sudden I'm a high elf.
Okay.
Then I don't know what to do or say or be, and when I feel uncomfortable, am not that creative. All right, so Kids on Brooms.
Just as a quick point, you don't have to play them any differently than a human if you don't want to.
I know, but then why do fantasy if you're not going to be something fun,
yeah,
like a gnome? Kids on Brooms is a definite maybe. What else you got for me?
I'm saving the best one for last. More books.
To be clear, Billie's entire bookshelf is filled.
Oh yeah, I have a dedicated bookshelf.
Filled with RPG books.
I'm sorry, cabinet.
And, well, you have
it's full of shelves.
And a cabinet full.
Oh, and then there's also the cubby up here.
They're
and
everywhere.
The shelf somewhere over there.
You're not going to play all of those. No.
Sadly, no. But that would be the dream.
Okay, but if you're not going to, you like having... Can you just read them?
Absolutely. That's what I do most of the time because you're a bum.
I'm not a bum.
You're a bum. I own literally hundreds of RPGs, most of them in digital or PDF form, but a ton of them are physical, and it's like having a little library of them, and I like to read through them sometimes.
It is a nice little library.
Especially ones that are thicker than most actual books, like Burning Wheel. That thing is a, Les Mis-sized brick of a book.
All right, what do you got for me besides Kids on Brooms? What's your number 2 here?
What is my number? Oh, right. It's a game that we don't have with us right now. It was a Kickstarter I backed not too long ago that's coming out in the not too distant future.
Hopefully.
I'm vague because I don't remember dates. It's called The Door Locks Behind You, and it's a very Legend of Zelda-inspired game, which is structured after their types of dungeons and stuff. It's focused on puzzles and problem-solving rather than combat, and has a unique inventory system where you have slots. Like in a video game, you could have 6 things on you. One might be a slingshot, a lamp, magic boots. And you use those to solve puzzles and
So I like that better than combat, because the other thing about RPGs is...
There is also some combat.
All of a sudden they're like, hey, roll for initiative, which, by the way, if you've never played, you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing, which just means that you roll to see who fights first. But people say things like, roll for strength, roll for dexterity, roll... And if you haven't played before, all of a sudden everybody's rolling their dice and yay, I got a 16, and you have no idea what you're
generally,
doing.
when you play with someone for the first time, they're going to teach you how to play.
You'd think. Yeah, but then some of us are really stubborn, and when we don't know, we don't necessarily want to ask again, because if it's been explained to us, we want to just be like, oh, well, yeah, I got that already.
That seems more like a you problem.
It might be, but again, we're talking about why we're not going to get these RPGs to the table, so The Door Locks Behind You doesn't have as much battle. It's more problems.
Yeah.
I like that. I like Zelda. So
it's
this could
exploring
work.
a dungeon, figuring out how to get to room from room, doing puzzles,
Are
riddles.
we like trolls and dwarves and things? Are we humans? Are we elves? Are we whatever lives in Zelda land? I don't know. So that's a decent one, I think. Maybe. What kind of system is it?
It is a unique system that they're making themselves, and it looks very interesting so far.
Okay. And when we talk about the system, we're talking about some of these themes you can put right on top of the rules for D&D, like 5th edition. So you're using the same rules to roll and
same
battle.
Rules, different world and story.
But a lot of them have their own rules, so that you have to learn those. I prefer sometimes the ones that have their own rules because they're a little bit more streamlined and simplified and made for people who might not be familiar with D&D.
Next up is Mothership, a sci-fi horror RPG. It's like Call of Cthulhu, but you're playing as the crew from Alien.
Feels like Among Us.
Oh.
Is that like... No?
I mean, sure.
I only have so many references.
I mean, yeah, it is Among Us, the RPG.
It's not, though, is
no,
it?
You could play it like that. There's no rule that says
so
you
it's
can't.
a little scarier.
No
than
rule
that?
says dogs can't play basketball.
Air Bud.
The people know.
So it's scarier than Among Us?
It is, in fact, scarier than Air Bud, yes.
Okay. Oh, that's very scary. Wasn't there a really good one, the 10 Candles one, that I wanted to play that was like spooky time one, right?
And you like blow out a candle anytime something goes wrong, and once all the candles are out, game over, everyone's dead.
Yeah, that sounds really fun.
There's on a similar note, there's Dread, which you play, instead of blowing out candles, you're taking pieces out of a wooden block tower.
It's not that game that we all know.
And if it falls, bad things happen to you. If you manage to get the piece out, you succeed in your action.
Oh, that's fun.
And it's a really good way to build up tension.
What system does Mothership use?
It is also unique, but it uses a D100 it's a D100 based system rather than D20.
But I only have up to D20.
D100 is 2 D10s rolled in tandem, with one taking
do you multiply them?
No.
Why?
Well, if you didn't interrupt me, maybe you'd know. One represents the first digit in the number, and the other represents the second. So if you roll a 3 and a 4, you have 34. Generally, you can tell which is which by either rolling 2 dice of different colors, and before you roll, say, this one's the 10s, this one's the 1s.
Okay. My dice have 1.
Yeah. Dice sets will come with 2 d10s, one with an extra 0 on it, representing the...
Okay, so if we roll these, what do we get?
3, 0, and a 3 is 30.
303.
No.
No, wouldn't it be 33?
Didn't I say 33?
No, you said 30.
Shut up.
I win RPGs!
Yeah, it's 33. It's 33. Well,
okay.
It's hard to remember those things we're rolling right now from a long time ago.
So if you roll a d20 and you get a 20 without any assistance, you get like bonus points.
In a lot of systems, that is called a critical hit. And
right?
It does really well.
Okay. What happened? Can you do that with 2d10s? Like, can you?
Generally, in a 2d10 system, you're trying to roll under a number rather than over. So rolling a 1 would be really good. That would be a critical hit. Next up is a setting that many of you may be familiar with. This was a recently kickstarted RPG, and we backed it for the whole big monster bundle. It is Root, the role-playing game.
Ooh. Why do you need 2 giant books to play this game?
You don't. You only need this one.
So this is the core book, A Game of Woodland Adventure. Look how cute it's the little Root guys.
It is filled with gorgeous art by Kyle Farron. Like, cover to cover, it's a delight to read.
So what's this one?
Extra stuff.
Like what?
Travelers and Outsiders.
What do we get if they give us a book of Travelers and Outsiders?
You get new class options and new people you could potentially play as.
So it's basically getting new factions.
Yes. Yeah, it's like getting it's like an expansion
pack. It's getting
pack.
the expansion, but you get these factions that you can play as, right?
That book is an expansion pack.
We get to play Root without playing Root.
Yes.
You get to be in the story of Root.
You are all the vagabonds, and you are going between the different empires vying for supremacy. You're just the little dudes going from town to town.
Okay, so you might get me to play this. And honestly, you probably have more of a chance of getting me to play this than playing Root anymore.
Well, that's because you're a bad person and have bad opinions.
So what I'm hoping is that this gives me the feel of playing Root without the giant rules overhead that sometimes just wears me out. What is the system for this one?
It is PBTA.
What does that mean?
It means Powered by the Apocalypse. It sounds scary, which is why most people call it PBTA. Originally, there was a game called Apocalypse World, and it was a very unique system. The setting is definitely not for me, and some of the rules were a bit crude. But the system itself, it's been used in dozens of other games. It is incredibly popular, and it's a very approachable system.
Okay, so even people who aren't familiar with other systems would pick this up pretty quick.
Yes.
But you still need a DM or a GM to play this one.
Yes, you do.
Are you done? Is that all the games you're going to try to convince me to play?
For the 5th on my list is the one that I know you are going to play.
It sounds awful confident for someone who can't make me play games.
Labyrinth, the adventure game.
Aww. David Bowie. Again, theme is going to get me to play. I want to show you something cool, though. Look at where the dice go. Look at that. They're right there. They're right in the book. They're right there in the book. So tell me why, other than theme, which obviously we're just going to put on the movie or the soundtrack and then play. Tell me why I should play this and not just watch the movie and have some popcorn.
Well, you should probably do both.
I'm willing to skip the RPG, so tell me why I shouldn't.
Because it's a very simple, easy to learn system. It is 2d6.
Okay.
And the game itself is, like the door locks behind you, much more focused on puzzles, riddles, and interesting scenarios than
Getting
it is
through a
on
labyrinth.
It's more focused on that than combat. It's a much more of a problem-solvey typey thingy. It was written by Ben Milton, who runs another YouTube channel, Questing Beast.
Check it out.
We should link to that. And he is a fantastic writer, and I have complete faith in him.
Okay. Well, the theme is good.
Yes.
Will there be Muppets at the table?
Absolutely, if you make them.
We're done!
Nope.
No.
Surprise bonus round.
Okay.
This is Kingdom, a great example of a GM-less role-playing game.
So you don't need anybody to do this.
It's
I
not.
mean, you need other people to play.
It's not a solo game,
but
you don't need someone to host it.
So it's choose your own adventure.
What?
So how do you play if you don't have someone in charge?
You're working together to tell the story of a community. The community could be, like the cover says, a kingdom. You're telling the story of a community, of its creation and potentially its downfall. And you are making characters in that community and zooming in on scenes that might take place during that story that you are collaboratively working together to tell. What?
I don't think you're going to get me to play this one. You're going to have to come up with a really good community to get me to play this one. I don't know. We'll see about this one. I mean, it could be good if you pick a really good community.
Well, you'd be working together to create one, so you would have a big say in it.
What else you got?
Recently announced, and I am very excited about it because it is my favorite ever setting for Dungeons & Dragons, is a new version of Spelljammer. I have the second edition copy of it here. It has not gotten that much love since this book came out.
What is this and why do I care about it?
It is... Have you ever seen the movie Treasure Planet?
Yes.
It's basically that, except with magic. You are sailing giant sailing ships through outer space, and swashbuckling adventures happen on them.
But since it's not here yet, I don't have to make a decision and I can let you know.
It's on the honorable mention list because it's D&D, which is pretty well known, but this setting is less well known, so I still wanted to mention it.
I bought a D&D setting.
You bought an RPG adventure book.
Okay, I don't know what the difference is, but I backed it because Billie was always trying to get me to play RPGs, and there's a Jane Austen setting called An Unexpected Wedding Invitation that was on Kickstarter, so I jumped in and backed it. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if I'm ever going to play it, but it seemed like a good idea. The other one that I bought, and it was based on theme because it's always going to be that.
Yeah.
For me, I don't really care what system it is Quest, which is based on the Disney movie Onward. And we're still hoping. I started even painting the little figures for that one. We're still hoping to play it,
They're coming
except
along really well.
Billie has some delusion that I am going to run that one, and
You said you would.
I know, but it feels so overwhelming.
It might at first, but so if you play more games as a player, you might get more used to it and have a better grasp.
I feel like that's a trap. I feel like you're saying, if you don't want to do this thing, you should do more of this thing so that you feel better.
If you don't want to DM or GM, you should play as a player until you get more used to the setup and the flow of the game.
So you just said what I said.
Being a GM and a player are two very different things.
But do you have any fun if you're the GM? Because you're just like,
absolutely.
You don't get to make any of the choices, or
you make all
you
of
don't
the
get to
choices.
roll the dice. And...
You're the one giving them the questions to make choices with.
Yeah, but that's like making the quiz.
Yeah.
No.
And you get to set up all sorts of puzzles and adventures, and you get to watch your friends bumble through it like idiots.
You're supposed
but in a fun way.
You're supposed to be making us want to play.
Don't you want to watch your friends bumble around?
During like COVID and lockdown, we could play these online, right? Which these are some of the games that are easiest to play.
Absolutely, because all you really need are dice. You don't even need dice. You can use an online dice roller.
Does that take away from the experience?
A little. But if you're using cameras, you're back to not taking away from it at all.
I mean, because I think some of the like joy is watching people roll their dice and be like, "Oh no, terrible roll!"
Or yay, natural 20.
Yeah, and online, I think we lost a little. So we did play online, and it was fun. I had both good and not so good experiences playing it online, and I think that that's just the same as it's always been for me playing in person. That it depends a lot on the group, if everybody's kind of on the same page with how they want to play, because it's not Critical Role, but maybe they want it to be Critical Role, or maybe you have people who are just really still getting their feet wet and learning. So I think the absolute one thing that matters more than what book you make us play or what theme that is the group that you're playing with.
It's who you're playing with, yeah. The group is very important. Who you play it with, make sure they're people, you like.
Well, I would recommend that for all games.
Well, yeah, generally. One more.
What?
Honorable mention. Brindlewood Bay.
Oh, yes. When Billie told me, I have this great RPG to show you, and then the video trailer is like, this is a story about elderly women. And Billie said, this would be great for you.
That's not what I meant,
How How is that incentive to play this
You
game?
love New England and little old ladies.
I do love New England and little old ladies. I aspire to be one of them. That looks really fun. You're solving crimes?
But then you slowly uncover supernatural crimes.
And that one is on...
It's live on Kickstarter
It's live on
now.
Kickstarter right now, which obviously we backed it because Billie just wants to have it here to say, please play this game.
You should all back it. Billie endorsed game. Everyone back it.
That was her, not me. So that's it now, right?
Yes, nah. Wait. Yeah.
Those are the Billie recommendations for the top 5 that she's looking forward to getting to the table, plus some extra odds and ends, some solo ones, and some ones that don't need someone to run it, and some that are still on Kickstarter. Let us know if you've played any of these, if you're looking forward to trying some of these.
If any of them sounded interesting and you have some questions about them, I'd be happy to
Billie
jump in the
will
questions.
actually answer all the comments.
I'll be in the comments this time.
And you know what? You can also hop right in the Discord.
The discard.
What was that?
Join the discard.
You can also hop right in the Discord and you can talk to Billie about RPGs or anything else, and that link's going to be down below.
It's true. Just make sure you ping me.
Thank you for watching. If you like what you see,
or if you'd like to keep watching until we get one right,
then please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to find us elsewhere on social media, including on that Discord, all that information will be down below. As always, open tables, open minds, and play yourselves.
Happy belated birthday to me!
Different but legally distinct from.
Similar,
but legally distinct from.
Different but legally distinct from seems kind of easy.
People say things when you're playing an RPG like, okay, roll a strength check.
Oh yes, the RPG jingo.
I make one mistake. I think it's a word now.
Jargon or lingo.
It's jingo. But so I'm gonna cut all this out.
No, you're not.
Because I'm just wondering, because obviously you can roll a 0 in a d20 and that's super bad.
No, you can only roll a 1.
Really?
There's no 0.
Oh, I
There's
was
20
sure
sides,
I rolled a 0.
20 sides, not 21.
Okay, I'm gonna leave that out.
1 is a supplement. It says it right there on the cover.
Be smart ass. I'm trying to get you to tell people
It's
why.
a supplement. It says it right there on the cover.
Why do I do this? And is this Ben the same guy?
What?
Ben Robbins?
Is Ben Robbins the same guy as Ben Milton?
Yes.
Yeah. No, actually, they're brothers. They're brothers.